Hello, welcome back again. It's time to talk about the arcane tower or the mage tower. So I have a little presentation organized for today, nothing too long, and then we'll do some discussion around the process of designing and making your own mage tower or arcane tower, because that's what the purpose of this live stream is. We have in the past talked about spells and spell casting, things like that. Anyway, I would normally put up a poll, but I'm not going to put up the poll right now. I'm going to leave that and we're going to go straight into the discussion. As I said, presentation should be less than about 4 minutes, and then I will open up and you can discuss it in the chat with me, some of the ideas that you have, and we can throw things around. Anyway, grab some food, some drink, make sure you're comfortable, get ready, and we will get started with this. Hi, welcome to How to RPG. My name is Fred Wheeler, and today I want to talk about role-playing games, and the topic is designing your own mage tower, arcane tower, magical tower, whatever it is. How do you actually go about doing that? Now, I want to keep this really basic, some basic concepts. So, the locations within your tower. Usually you're going to need stairs. Now, you could run a spiral staircase right through the center of the tower, but that restricts the amount of space you have on each level, the size of your rooms, things like that. It is probably smarter to run a spiral staircase on the side of the tower leading up so that you have more use for each level of your tower. So the rooms can be a bit bigger, there's nothing obscuring it, nothing getting in the way, nothing right down the middle of the room. Also too, another big factor for designing a tower with multiple levels, that it's going to be a mage tower, or an arcane tower, and that is just a standard staircase won't work because of the distance you have to travel. You need, if you have just a straight staircase, it's not going to work very well. It's not appropriate. The spiral staircase is still the most sensible thing to use. Now, what rooms or locations would you have in your tower? These are basic ideas. The lobby, a room providing a space in which one or more rooms or corridors could lead to. And this is usually your entrance. This will be your first floor, your bottom floor. Your mezzanine floor, which is basically an intermediate floor or floors. You could usually just use one for your mage tower. And it's located, it's open, and it looks down onto the lobby or the first floor. Why would you do that? Well, because while somebody's trying to fight their way in, if somebody's stupid enough to do that, you can shoot down various arrows and magic onto the first floor into the lobby from your mezzanine floor. Storage rooms. You need to have storage rooms for storing all the stuff that you have, just like anybody else. You need some closets. What about your workshop? A room in which you manufacture or fabricate or repair various things, whether that be armor, weapons, books, clothing, could be anything, and it will probably be related to being magical in some nature. Laboratory, a room with equipment for making potions and chemicals, something set up specifically for that. The library, this is a room containing a collection of books or scrolls. This is where you have all of your archives set up. This is where you might do some of your study. Or you may decide that the library is just where you have the books. You actually have a set-aside quiet place, a study with a desk, some chairs, or one chair for doing your writing and your reading so that nobody else can interrupt you. So a study might be useful. Teleportation chambers. This is a room with a teleportation circle in it for traveling quickly throughout your world. And usually the teleportation circle is going to take you to other teleportation circles linked in that world. Fast travel is now an option. The portal chamber. If you've really got a bit of time, you may have a portal chamber. And this is going to be a room full of portals or doors that lead to different worlds outside of the world that you're on. And then right at the top, this is probably where you'll put your observatory. This is a room that houses an astronomical or a large telescope for studying the sky and the stars, for actually looking and gazing at the world above you. And that's probably all you really need. Now, there's lots of other things you could include into an arcane tower or a mage tower, but these are just the basics. This is at least a jumping off point. These are the things you probably almost always have, or certainly would be working towards in the first place. So I'm hoping this was useful and helpful to you. I want to thank you for listening and watching. I want to thank my patrons who support me so I can keep doing this. And hey, till next time, keep rolling those 20s. Okay, all right. So I presented just a very small amount of stuff for today. It is very hot in my room. I am absolutely sweltering. I have to take this hat off. I don't think I'm going to be able to cope. I'm actually having difficulty seeing through the glasses, and hopefully I'm not going to fog up too much. I probably should open the door to my room, which I'm going to do right now before I pass out. And and I thought what would be nice is to have a discussion about the sorts of things you might want to include into your wizard tower, into your mage tower, into your arcane tower. Things that I may have left out. Now, I could have put more things down, but as you may have discovered, I'm deliberately doing my presentations so they are less than 8 minutes so that they don't get mid-roll ads running through them. So I am actually just giving you small portions. I do that deliberately, okay? And I want to respond to chat. So I'm going to open this door and then we'll get into it. Okay. Right. You might hear some noise from outside. That's just life, unfortunately. So let's start off. Phil. Hello, Phil. One of the lair encounters I designed for an adventure in the chromancy on DM's Guild is this exactly. Okay, I'm not sure what we were talking about. Fred must have put something in there. Fred Huber, who is a patron, must have put something in there before I came on. I've missed it. Consider a lich with a 2-meter adamantium cube phylactery. Well, I suppose you could do that. If we're dealing with an arcane tower, it might be an arcane tower for a lich. Absolutely. So out of anybody who's going to have an arcane tower or a mage tower, it is probably not the player characters who will have that. Let's get real. Because you would need to have a lot of time to be able to actually fill out your tower, to actually imbue magic into the bricks, into the actual structure. And who has the time to do that? It's going to be a lich. Somebody who has all the time in the world. So yeah, why not? May very well be a level that is housing the phylactery. Although that's too easy to get at. I think that you would probably make it significantly harder than just an adamantium cube as the phylactery. Anyway, hello Sean Chapman, how are you doing? Yes, I am still here, and Merry Christmas to you too. Fred Huber, sign on the door, keep out wizard at work. First floor is all about discouraging guests. Yeah, so your lobby, your first floor is probably going to have your guards. You're probably going to station some sort of construct or some guards on the first floor in your lobby. And just getting through the door to the lobby is probably going to be difficult from the outside. Hello, Overboard. How are you doing? Overboard is a moderator. How's it going, Joe? Merry Christmas to you too. Okay, so let's have a look at some of the other things that we might want to consider within a mage tower. Since this is one of the things that we quite often wind up using. You go exploring, you have an adventure, it's all about exploring the mage tower, there's all sorts of strange things there, things like that. When it comes to experimentation, wizards are probably the worst ones, correct? So it kind of assumes that wizards have been historically notorious for experimenting on animals. So you may in fact have a zoo, or a kennel, or some cages in the room that houses all of your experiments. Yeah, your freak zoo might very well be one of those levels within your tower or one of the rooms within your tower. I still think it's quite smart to make every level its own room, rather than breaking up a tower into segments like slicing a cake. But you can do that however you like. So you may well have within your space something that is like a zoo. Now, where would you put the zoo? You'd put your zoo pretty close to wherever your laboratory is, because the laboratory is probably where you're going to be doing all that sort of messing around, okay? Or at least that's where you'll fabricate the potions and chemicals that will allow you to do that sort of thing. So we can put in I'll just call it a zoo. So a room full of cages with strange animals. Strange creatures, probably more creatures now. Creatures that are deformed. Probably what we're looking at. The zoo. Now, yes, you could house that in the basement. It could certainly be in the lower levels rather than the upper levels. But you also wouldn't want to be able to, you wouldn't have to want to transport them too many levels. So you may well, as I said, have that close to wherever you're doing your major experimentation. Unless, of course, you would put your laboratory down in the basement next to the zoo, which may well be the most sensible thing to do. So yes, absolutely, design it around that way. Again, really kind of up to you how you would structure that. So let's mark off. Now there's a reason why I was talking about staircases. Like stairs, the most sensible type of staircase to have is the spiral staircase. And as I said, you can run your staircase along the side of the outer wall of your mage tower, okay? Or you could run it down the middle. It's quite tempting to run it down the middle. That only really works if you're going to cut up each level of your tower like a pizza. If you're going to cut it up like a pizza or like a cake and have slices coming off it. Otherwise, it's going to be a bit of a pest. Again, I still think the benefits of simply having one level as its own room is probably going to be smarter. The reason for doing that is that you can go higher and you don't have to go out. Again, it's really up to you. I don't think there's any sort of set way that you have to do it, but those are the things to consider. The one staircase that does not work, though, is a staircase that is just straight. And a tower, it's probably the worst type of staircase you could have. I guess construction-wise, easier to do, but they take up so much space. So that's the biggest issue. Whereas the spiral doesn't do that. It's just more technical. Access route center down the side. Okay. If you haven't figured it out, I'm so hot right now that I'm really struggling. We'll do our best today. So we've discussed the zoo, maybe in the basement or dungeon area, or the lower level underground, along with your laboratory. Hello, Derp. Derp is a patron. Thank you for being here. Nice to have you. Mage Tower may have a garden for magic herbs and cucumbers. Sure. Now, an alchemy lab is basically just a laboratory. It's the same thing. I already talked about that. Spell research laboratory library. Again, we have a library. I mean, the library can serve many different purposes, whether that's to do with spells or just history. I mean, it covers all those sorts of things. But a garden's actually not a stupid idea. The problem with a garden is you would have to use some way of providing light, particularly if the garden is not on the top level. And we're kind of probably going to be reserving the garden. Sorry, the garden being on the top level means that we wouldn't have an observatory, because you put the observatory on the very top level so that you can point your telescope at the sky, right? So that's what I would suggest, is probably that's the smartest way. Now, so a garden level is really like a biosphere, isn't it? It would be more of a greenhouse. So you would have to use magic or some other means of actually heating the room or providing light. You'd have to put moisture in there. So you're not going to be using natural light in a tower. So the greenhouse. What's another word for greenhouse or biosphere? I can't quite remember. But yeah, that's probably not a bad idea whatsoever, is to include something like that. So let's go here. Greenhouse, a biosphere, full of plants grown. Oh, come on, grown by I guess natural means. So we've got the biosphere or garden. That's them. Cool. Spiral staircases are a open shaft, so wizard can levitate from ground to top rather than walk. That might well be sensible too. You could even include an elevator. If you don't want to walk up a staircase and you've got the technology, you've got something set up, you could have just an elevator. Hello, negative space. How are you? Yes, Merry Christmas to you too. Solarum. A solarum is basically more of a castle thing. Although let's consider that. But I think there's something to be said for an elevator. Whether you just elevate by using magic, or whether there's an actual elevator. So elevator. This is for your mage tower that's a bit more advanced, I would say. All right, let's go here. Copy. So I'm writing this all down as I go, people, so that I don't make the mistake of talking about the same thing again. Okay, elevator. A platform. Okay, that's really what we want. Okay, I've got it. Copy, and I'll drop that in. So it's clear. Paste. A platform or compartment. Compartment housed in a shaft for raising and lowering people or things to different levels. That's good enough. Yep, got it. So let's put the elevator in there. What do you got here, Joe? You need to have a trash chute that leads outside for the failed experiments. Wink, wink. Dead animals that come back to life as mutations. Oh. A garden on a balcony encircling the tower. Oh, I see what you're saying here, Fred. Okay, that might be it. Is that the formal word rather than greenhouse? Arboretum. I'll check that in a second. A trash chute. I think you would. I mean, look. I think with most castles and towers, there's going to be a trash chute, but the trash chute's usually just a window, wouldn't it? It would just be thrown out the window. Would you really need to build in a specific trash chute? I don't know that you would need to worry too much about that. Plus, wizards, what are they going to do? They're going to just incinerate everything using magic, aren't they? Poof, ash. Burn it with magic. Bing, gone. Let's do the arboretum and see if I can just see what that says. We'll put that in there. Arboretum. Define it. A botanical garden devoted to trees and plants. Okay. What is the difference between a botanical garden and an arboretum? That's interesting. Let's find that out. An arboretum is a biological collections that are devoted to trees rather than all kinds of plants. Oh, I don't think that's quite right then. Biological gardens generally have many different kinds of plants and may or may not also have trees in their collection. Yeah, I don't think that's going to be the one you'll be after. Yeah, so close, but not quite. I think we stay with let's just stay with our greenhouse. I think our greenhouse is going to do the job quite nicely. Thank you very much. Okay, all right. And negative space, I said solarum, and which is basically the solarum is just it's a living room. It's a lounge space. And yes, it would probably make sense to have a lounge space somewhere where the magic users can just hang out and have a good time. A room with sun lamps or sun beds, which can be used to acquire a artificial suntan. Ah, solarum. Okay, a room fitted with extensive areas of glass to admit sunlight. Okay, now I see what you're saying. It's a different thing. Okay, that kind of makes sense. I think the idea of the greenhouse is probably a better idea. I didn't mention anything about living spaces, like things like kitchens and bathrooms and lounges and bedrooms. You notice I didn't mention anything about that in the Wizard or Mage Tower or Arcane Tower. The reason I didn't mention them is because you already know those. They're the really obvious things. I don't need to mention those, do I? Would I really need to mention them? I don't think they're that important. They're probably the least interesting places for the players to explore, and you don't need my help with that at all. Of course, it's December for me. It is definitely December. So it is Christmas Eve here in New Zealand, and I'll be going to work very shortly because I've got to work Christmas Eve, and it's Christmas Day tomorrow. I actually had my gathering with my family yesterday, which was very nice. Okay, a floating disc bell would probably be good for an elevator. Yeah, absolutely, you could definitely do something like that. Feed the trash to the pet gelatinous cube. I suppose, yes, that's true. So I guess what I'm going to do is I'm going to just pull under general living spaces. So living spaces, I'm going to just pull the things that the standard stuff, the more boring stuff. So let's include that as right here. Actually, they're probably going to be near I would say just above the Menzian level. I don't think you'd have them necessarily that high up, but anyway, let's go to living spaces. This is bedrooms, kitchen, dining room, bathroom, and I guess we could have a laundry room. I suppose you could have a laundry room. Laundry, kitchen, laundry, and lavatory or toilet. Lavatory. So we've got all our living spaces covered. That was the next one. So I'm going to put up a poll now. I normally do that at the beginning of my live streams, but just my brain's not working that well, people. So while there are a few of you here, I would like to ask you a question. Have you created or used a mage tower in your role-playing games? I think I've asked this question before, but I think I'm going to ask it again. It's always interesting to see how many people do this sort of thing. Okay. Have you created or used a mage tower in your tabletop role-playing games? Let's put this. Yes. No. Can't remember. Can't remember. And we'll have just watching, eh? Just watching. And we'll put that up. Okay, that's that done. All right, so what else in terms of a mage tower, in terms of your design, are you going to need to require in terms of what is actually going to need to be there? You can break up certain things into smaller clumps. So, for example, I know a lot of people are probably thinking, well, hang on, Fred, what if we want to forge something? The workshop is kind of like a forge, but what if the workshop doesn't have a forge? Do we need to have a blacksmith in our tower? Now, one of the reasons why I would not say that you would have a forge or a blacksmith in your mage tower is for a couple of different reasons. And they make a lot of sense. And that the first one is fire hazard. Now, you're dealing with magic, so with magic can solve everything, correct? But if you're thinking outside of the reality of it, more likely you would have a blacksmith with a forge, which would be different to a workshop. The forge is fire and heat. And putting fire and heat into a tower that's like basically a missile is just going to cause a whole lot of problems. One, potentially you burn the whole thing down. Two, you create a lot of additional heat, which heats the whole place up, even when you don't want to heat it up. Again, another huge problem. You might say, well, if you put it higher up, then you run less of a risk. You only could potentially burn down just the top end, but that's not really true. I think it makes much more sense that if you're having specifically a workshop that doesn't have a forge, that's what you would probably have, and you're wanting a blacksmith or a forge where you're going to be heating metal or heating something to a high state, that it would not be in the tower, that it would actually be housed away from the tower in its own external building. That would be probably the smartest and most sensible thing to do, rather than to include it into the mage tower or your arcane tower or your lich tower or magic tower. So I would always put your blacksmith or forge outside of the tower itself, just for those reasons. Again, when you're designing stuff, you don't have to design it to make sense. But again, it's always nice to have something that there's a good reason why they do things. So yes, put your forge and your actual blacksmith that's going to have a forge in it. Don't put it in the tower. Put it outside, external building, away from the tower. Hello, Shiner81. How are you doing? So what have we got here? You guys have been negative space. My answer to the poll would be not yet. Not yet. Can't remember. That's fine. So just watching. It's all good. That's all fine. I wasn't expecting all of my... I can only put in, so for you haven't figured it out, I can only put in 4 options in a poll on a live stream. It's not designed to do multiple choice beyond 4 options. That's it. It would be a higher level floating disc. That would be scary if someone's dispelled it while it was up high. Well, yeah. Look, so this is one of the reasons why instead of having a floating disc that moves up and down magically, which would be great, that you simply just have a pulley system with an elevator box in it, you know, or a compartment of some kind. Guards and ward spells permanently cast, possibly multiple times. So what I talked about magic last time, about 2 months ago. We talked about the arcane tower, and I discussed magic and casting permanent spells onto a magic tower. I know this is an important part of this topic. I get it. I'm leaving that for now because I kind of talked about that 2 months ago. So now we're just dealing with how do you lay it out? How do you position things? I will come back to talking about magic in the future, but I've also got to do it. I think I've got to do a bit more research and think a bit more about it, because there are a few problems with casting spells in 5e and making them permanent. Part of the problem is people's understanding of what is reasonable. Um, but when it comes to guards, things like warding spells, they don't even have to be permanently cast. You could just have somebody cast one in the right place, leave it in place. When it gets activated, you clear out your intruders, you put the spell back in place. So you don't even have to have it necessarily being permanently cast. Guards are your big factor. I would say constructs are a huge aspect of your mage tower. I kind of feel like that's a topic in itself. Constructs such as the shield guardian, golems, because obviously wizards and magic users are probably quite capable of creating golems of many different types, and so you would want to include that into your mage tower. But yeah, today was sort of more about the physical structure, the layout of rooms, what you might have there, what they would be used for. I think it would be interesting if the mage had a chute to the basement that throws their experiments down there. They come back to life and move around down there. So I suppose that's one way. So negative space, that's certainly one way. If you want to have your laboratory in the higher levels of your tower, you could have a chute that just drops them down. The problem is you're taking up more space to be able to send it down there. And, depending on the size of the creature, if it's a small or medium-sized creature, probably not a big deal. If it's a large creature, you kind of have to shove it down there, don't you? And what if it's even bigger again? What if you decided to do something and it sort of grew to an unusual size? And now how do you get it down there? You're going to cut it up into pieces and send it down? So, yeah. I think it probably makes sense that laboratory and your zoo, where all your failed experiments, they would be probably below the lobby, further down, away from everything else. Down there over time, it would also be something interesting for the character to find down there. Yes, absolutely. Yep. Now, you could, I suppose, potentially put a cell system or for prisoners and so forth, but I don't think that's really what your mage or magic user is really going to be doing. I think that's probably very unlikely to be something that they would be really focusing on. It would be more useful to them to send them off somewhere else rather than to have to house them here. It's not like a castle where you would want to house your prisoners in a dungeon below ground level or something like that. Or even, dungeons sometimes were actually at the top tower, right up the top, so hard to get at. Okay. Okay, so one of the other things I also noticed, when we come to the topic of mage towers, there were a few notes that you guys had left with me last time that you wanted to discuss. Things that you were hoping that we would look into and do a bit more work around the mage tower or arcane tower, and I'm really happy to work on those sorts of things. I know we had a huge discussion around spells. Like I said, we'll come back to spells in the future. Defensive apparatus. So basically defenses, things that you set up to protect yourself from attack when you have a mage tower, because you need to have something like that, right? So we'll definitely we'll look into that in the future. I'm certainly happy to talk about different defensive apparatus, things like the ballista. I don't think you can really put a catapult on a tower. It's going to be a bit difficult. But a ballista, you could probably mount a ballista on a tower. Things like arrows and magical artillery of some kind. We definitely need to talk about guardians, because guardians are a huge factor for the mage tower. Servants. I know a lot of people, we discussed this before, where the concept of you wouldn't really have servants in a mage tower. You would have unseen servants. You would have servants that are created magically, that sort of operate like from The Apprentice, like Mickey Mouse's Apprentice, where he uses magic to animate something to perform a very simple task, things like that. Also, too, I think at some point we will break down some of the rooms and give you some room descriptions, things like furniture and items you would find there. That'll probably be useful going forward as well. Construction methods. Somebody was mentioning how they would like a discussion around construction methods and how that works. And I'm all for discussing that sort of thing as well, but we'll probably leave that for another day. What do you got here? So, Just the Craft. Hello, Just the Craft. How are you doing? The Guardians and Ward spells from what? From what? What are we talking about? From something. I can't see it. From 5E is always a good start for defensive measures. Yes, to a certain degree, absolutely. You know, again, what is the most likely type of Guardian you would use? It'd have to be something you can control. If you're going to put in a Guardian, you need to have some sort of mechanism for controlling it, right? So whether that's a control collar, or it's a construct that follows your instructions. Oh, you're gonna cut it up into pieces and shove it down the chute. Okay, all right. Well, that's what I said. You know, if it's really big, then you know the chute doesn't really make any sense. But yeah, I still think. Look, you design it however you like. You design it however you like. So I know this is a short one. Tomorrow is Christmas for me. What's it? It's not a spell. Called Guardians, Called Guards and Wards. Guards and Wards, yeah. So we'll come back to the topic of the Mage Tower, Arcane Tower in the future. I wanted to just do a really short one for today. It's really hot, it's really humid, and unless there are any other spaces within the tower that you think we need to discuss, I think I've marked down all the basic ones that we needed to have. I think they're all there. So, what's happening tomorrow? I'm not live streaming tomorrow because it's Christmas Day. I'm not live streaming the day after that because that's Boxing Day. I'm not going to be doing any live streaming. I will attempt to release an edited video on those days. I haven't released an edited video for about 8 or 9 days, so I'm probably due for that. So I'll do that instead. Okay, that's my intention. That's what I'm going to try to work towards, and then we will return after Christmas Day and Boxing Day for me in New Zealand. We'll return on the 27th for me in New Zealand, and we'll do some character building for Morkbork. That's sort of where my head is at. I have a couple of other things lined up this week, so we're going to build an adventure after Morkbork, the day after, and then I'm going to talk, as I always do before the end of the year, I always talk about the future of Dungeons and Dragons, but I'm not going to be a trophy room. Hello, Pale Rider. Yeah, a collection room or trophy room. I think that's a good point. A trophy room or collection room. Very, very good idea, actually. I like that. I'll have to make sure I mark that down. I will do that, though. But like I said, every year I normally talk about the future of Dungeons and Dragons. Now, you might know, or some of you might not know, but I do talk about Dungeons and Dragons, but not exclusively just D&D, okay? And not exclusively D&D 5e. I broaden things out a lot more, and it's going to get broader and broader as I move forward. So the title will not really be the future of Dungeons and Dragons. It'll be the future of tabletop role-playing games or role-playing games in 2024. Moving forward into the new year, okay? That's what I want to discuss. That doesn't mean I will exclude the discussion around Dungeons and Dragons, because that's not true, okay? I will discuss those sorts of things. The point is that it's not going to be exclusively D&D. I thought it was going to be far more useful and interesting to discuss some key questions that I think people have, things that I thought were interesting, and so I selected some questions. So end of the week, Friday for me, I'm going to discuss the new tabletop role-playing games coming out in 2024 and 2025. I'll discuss that, so what's coming out and what I think to a certain degree. I will also, this will be a long live stream, I imagine, but you know, a long live stream nowadays is about an hour and a half for me. There'll also be discussion around third-party publishers in the coming years, okay? And I'm also going to cover things like physical books, because there's been a lot of talk about physical books going the way of the dodo. So I wanted to discuss that as well. and put in my perspective of what I think is likely to be happening here. I will talk about the official Dungeons & Dragons book releases for Wizards of the Coast, but it will be extremely brief. I will not be spending a lot of time on it, so I will discuss that very quickly. I will also be covering, because I know there are people who have questions about the release of D&D in 2024, because this is like the big thing that's sort of coming, right? That a lot of people are like, oh, okay, what's the big deal? I know there's a lot of you who want me to talk about that sort of thing, so I will. And I will probably also talk about Hasbro and the trouble that they are in. These ones feel very tabloidy in terms of subject matter, so I have a problem with discussing it. I will talk about artificial intelligence in the tabletop role-playing game arena. I will talk about a potential Dungeons & Dragons movie in the future. And I'll also talk about the social media, the gaming community, the tabletop role-play game community, the YouTube content creators, what's kind of going on with all of that. I'll put my 2 cents in on that. I think that covers pretty much everything that I would need to talk about with regard to 2024. Okay, so it's to get all of that out, get it all, so people don't have a. I know there are certain things I don't like talking about, and so when people ask me these questions, sometimes they're a little bit unsure if they should ask the question. So I'm just going to spit it out and answer the questions that I know a lot of people avoid asking me because they're worried that I'll get either annoyed, pissed off, or just refuse to answer. So I'm going to let it all go out for this year, and we start fresh and move into the new year. Okay. In the early editions, mages built dungeons underneath the towers, giving monsters access to external entrance points to the dungeon. Oh, okay. I suppose they. Maybe they do. Maybe they do. Okay. Anyway, I need to get going. That's what's coming for this week. That's what you can expect. If there are other questions that I need to consider answering, I would suggest just chuck them into the chat right now. Okay, that's always good. You could always just leave a question in the comments section, and hopefully I will spot it. But that's where my head is with today. Okay, so we're going to come back to the Arcane Tower and Mage Tower, talk about Guardians and magic and stuff like that in the future. Anyway, let's move on. Should we? Yes, I think we should. So I want to say a huge thank you to everybody who's been in the chat today in the live stream. Thank you for watching and listening. Thank you for taking part in the poll. I do appreciate it. Sorry I didn't put it up sooner. I should have done that. I want to thank everybody who is a patron who has been supporting me on Patreon. I really do appreciate it. It's made a big difference. It's alleviated a lot of my stress levels. It hasn't necessarily changed things terribly and financially wise, but it certainly gives me a good indication of whether I'm doing something right or wrong. And I do appreciate a lot of your feedback too, because a lot of you have been very engaged, particularly on Discord. I want to say a huge thank you to the people who in chat who have been here today with me. Pale Rider, Negative Space, Peter McSorley. Hello, Peter. I'm glad you're looking forward to the discussion about 2024. I'm going to try to be as positive as I can, but I still will need to be realistic. Prepare, Cook and Survive. Thank you for being here. I do appreciate it. Shiner81, Just the Craft, Fred Huber. I know Fred Huber was here, so I gotta say thank you to Fred. I do appreciate it a lot. And I think I said something about Negative Space. Overboard, that's right. Dirt was here. And Sean Chapman and Phil. Thank you so much. And look, wherever you are in the world, whether it be the morning, the afternoon, the night, or the wee early morning, please look after yourself, your family, and your friends. Be nice to your neighbours. And hey, till next time, keep rolling those 20s. Merry Christmas.